Hi, jewells68 here for Talk to Me Tuesday on Tuesday, February 17th. Pretty much all I have to talk about is Project of Doom. I got Phoebe's Block 6 done, and I opted to go for one of the alternative blocks in the new quilt along, which was a picture frame, because I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to utilize some actual licensed HP fabric. I have a small amount. That was a gift from a certain someone, and she knows who she is. And I was able to fussy cut Harry catching the snitch and put that in the frame, and I will insert a picture of that here. And with regard to my own Project of Doom from 2011, I did get all of the blocks, all of the books on Block 2 embroidered. I did not put a title on this one, and actually originally this was background fabric. And I tried to make it my Invisible Book of Invisibility. However, I decided, I realized after I'd done it that I'd embroidered way too close to the edge, and when I pulled the stitching out, it was very holey, and anyway, I just decided to replace that fabric. So I replaced it with these owls, and they were so busy and have so many colors that I decided not to embroider a title on there. If I think of one later, before I get everything constructed, I'll add it. Otherwise, I may just leave it as it is. Because not all of the books on the bookshelf have to be Hogwarts textbooks or anything like that. So I may think of a title, something to do with owls, I don't know. Something I did want to share with regard to this block is there was another bit of negative space between two books right here, and I did make that my Invisible Book of Invisibility. I embroidered it using, so it shows up fine. I mean, you can see it like this, but you can also, I also used glow-in-the-dark embroidery floss, DMC embroidery floss, and holy crap, it works so well. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to capture it in action in the dark, but it glows like, man, it's just amazing how well it glows. So that is awesome, and I'll definitely have to do one of these in Phoebe's quilt. She was very impressed with the glow in the dark. She was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Anyway, so there's that. I'll insert an actual photo here. And I'm debating, I also bought some Coats & Clark embroidery thread for machine embroidery. And I'm toying with the idea, because it's so fine, of just outlining the book itself so that it also glows in the dark. But as far as the quilt itself, just the line of where the background fabric comes in here gives it defines it perfectly. So, you know, I don't think there's any issues with that. Something I tried different with this block. I used Sulky, which here. I used this stuff. I'm sorry, Sulky Solvy water soluble stabilizer. There's a tutorial on Fandom & Stitches on using it to transfer designs onto your fabric. So I utilized that, and the cool thing, the thing I really liked about it was I could take a nice big piece and basically what I did was I cut a piece the width of the block, and I marked off with a Sharpie, extra fine point Sharpie on the Sulky Solvy. I marked off the edges of the books, and the border here that I wanted to leave because I needed to make sure I allowed for the seam allowance on the side books. So I put the lines there. Once I had those, I actually used my homemade light box that I made recently, utilizing an acrylic frame. This is a cheesy acrylic photo frame that I purchased at the thrift store ages ago. I think for like 83 cents or something. I don't know. I purchased it ages ago at the thrift store with a plan of making it into a light box. And I used a string of white Christmas lights in it, and it didn't work. Now, I think if I were to get a couple of sets of LED lights, it would work fine. But anyway, here's what I did. So I basically cut, this is normally solid right here, and that's what holds the photo in the frame, if you've had one of these before, and the holes are for getting it separated from the glass or the plastic part. But instead of that, I bought 4 of these at Harbor Freight. These are flashlights. Very bright LEDs. Each one has 32 LEDs. I bought 4 of those. I laid them flat in here, kind of centered, and unfortunately they're too tall to actually slide this into the acrylic frame. So I just did this and turned it crisscross. And this was how I just laid my sulky on top of this, the Solvay. I laid it on top of the frame and just traced it with a Sharpie extra fine point, went over the letters. The titles you don't see on here, I just did by hand. And this is my original Invisible Book of Invisibility, which obviously I had to go smaller, so I just wrote them by hand with the Sharpie onto the Solvay. With the Sharpie onto the Solvay. Anyway, so that worked well, and so I love having a light box. That's handy. Here's the problem. The tutorial recommends using washable glue to adhere the Solvay to the fabric, and I did do that. I had no problem getting the Solvay off. I just soaked this in cold water for, I don't know, a couple hours. I just left it alone. I didn't rub it. I didn't do anything like that. It just dissolved. That's really awesome. The problem is the glue stick did not. It was labeled washable, non-toxic washable. It was not Elmer's, but it was non-toxic washable glue stick. Clear, acid-free, and it was not labeled school glue. Anyway, it did not come off. Last night I got a washcloth and I got it wet with clear, clean water and scrubbed the areas where the glue stick didn't come off. And so far they seem to be gone now. There's a little bit of a marking right there, but I just might not have washed it very well. So we will see. Anyway, I'm kind of afraid to use that again. Because I don't want to permanently stain my pod blocks. So I think I will just go back to tracing paper, I think, for a while. I'll continue to use the glue stick to base the muslin to the back of the block to give it some stability while I'm embroidering, but other than that, I'm kind of terrified of the glue because I don't want to ruin my quilt before I even have it together. So one last thing I wanted to bring up, and that was we're still thinking about how I'm going to put the titles on Phoebe's blocks, and a member of the Facebook group for Project of Doom was hand painting with Lumiere fabric paint, which I have a set of quite a lot of that actually on hand. The titles on her books. But it looked amazing. Like, I didn't believe it was possible to do that, and I knew she wasn't doing it with a brush or the tip. I thought, wow, she must be really talented to do that. She uses a product called Fantastics, and what it is, whoops, it came right off. It's like a sponge. It's foam, but see how it looks like a pencil? It's in the scrapbooking aisle. I bought mine at my Joann store in the scrapbooking aisle. I believe she ordered hers from Dharma Trading or one of those websites. And Joann's also has it on their website. This is the brush tip. It says brush. It's actually a firm, it's foam. So it absorbs the paint. I'll show you the one I actually used on my experiment. I knew I was going to use this title, Enchanted Encounters, on this Love Potion block. So this is the one I used. You can see it's still red. I didn't wash it off. I probably should have, but... So, using that Fantastics, I basically just opened some Lumiere, which is by Jacquard, and it's an opaque-ish fabric paint, metallics, mainly. And I've used it for stenciling tees before, t-shirts. So on an unwashed piece of quilting cotton, mind you, black, I wanted to see how well it showed up on the black, I used red. And look at that. This is after washing and drying with my clothes. I just threw it over the wash. So keep in mind, I wrote this with this Fantastics by just dipping it in the dipping it in the paint, and just very carefully. It was a little painstaking, but it came out looking amazing. And I am not practiced at painting or drawing. You know, I have no training in any of that, no art classes. So, and I just, I did this freehand. I can't remember. I might have done it with something first. I might have done it with like a pencil, or I don't know. I don't remember. I think I did mark it with a permanent scrapbooking pen first. A very fine tip. So there's that. And again, I did this with dipping the Fantastics in the Lumiere paint. You just have to be careful not to get too much paint on the tip, and to watch when it gets kind of, you have to make sure you're keeping it vertical like this when you're painting, because otherwise if you go like this, you start getting a wide swath of color. So so again, it's not, you have to pay attention to what you're doing, and you have to, it's a little slow, but it's faster than embroidery. So I will give it that. And she just, originally she was putting it on her, transferring it on with a pencil or whatever, using her light table, and then painting it. But she said now she's gotten so practiced at it, she just puts the fabric directly onto the light table, you know, has her design underneath there, and just paints it right then and there, rather than going through the step of tracing it first. So I think I may have a winner for the Project of Doom for Phoebe's book titles. I haven't given up on stenciling yet. I just haven't dealt with that. I haven't wanted to mess and change the blade and do all that kind of junk for the Cricut at this point. So I haven't given up on the Cricut, but I think I'm close to giving up on the Cricut. And I think the reason why I'm having so much trouble is because the letters are just so damn small for these book titles, that, at least for some of them, that it has a hard time cutting that material, whether it's the freezer paper, which is thin, or the vinyl, which is thick, the contact paper, which is thick. I think it has trouble with doing that. So I'm very impressed with how this turned out, considering I painted it on unwashed fabric. Unwashed, cheap fabric from Joann. So there's that. And it's bold, and I've already washed it once. I'll continue to throw it in the wash as I plug away on this stuff, and to see how well it holds up. I would say if it holds up to at least a dozen washes, I have a winner. Without doing any fading at all, because that's pretty damn permanent. I did press it before I washed it. It actually sat for a few days, after I painted it. And then when I had my iron hot for doing some piecing, I went ahead and pressed the crap out of it using just a piece of the leftover muslin, a little muslin strip on top of this. Pressed it on both sides. In fact, I just sat the iron on it and left it there for like, 30 seconds to a minute, and then flipped it over and did the same thing. And then left it for a few more days, and I didn't wash it until last night. So permanent. It looks pretty damn permanent. So I think we have a winner. And just as an example, I did some more on this one. I also bought some glow-in-the-dark paint to try for the Invisible Book of Invisibility. The word invisible, I don't know if you can see that, right at the bottom of the fabric. I used, it's the Scribbles paint, so it is dimensional. The only glow-in-the-dark paint I could find was dimensional for fabric. But I used the tulips, I used the Fantastics to try and do it more flat and have it not be dimensional, and it does show up, but I haven't checked to see if it actually glows in the dark yet, so I'll check that tonight now that I have it out of the wash. And all of this held up in the wash. This is more Lumiere, the blue. That's more Lumiere, and it's I just used the tip of the paint bottle to do that, and I wasn't happy with it, but it is nice and bold, so the blue shows up great on the black too. So we have a winner with the Lumiere, I think. This was a pen I tried out. It's called Reminisce, and it's looked great before I washed it, but it washed out, so that's definitely not a win. And that's it, I guess. That's all I have to show you for this week. I already have the paper off of my third block, and there's only 3 books on it, so I ought to be able to crank that out before block 7 is released, and then I'll start worrying about what fabrics I'll use for that. I hope everybody has a great